Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So we have a ton to cover. We have an ice storm, a winter storm potentially across the Midwest, really more of the Ohio Valley into the southern plains, as well as the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. We have very cold weather across the north and snow chances there as well. And also a big winter storm across the west, including Portland and some large cities that typically don't really see heavy snow. So let's get into this. If you guys would like to support this channel before we do, you could consider subscribing. Hitting the thumbs up button also helps out a ton. Otherwise, let's start digesting these storm potentials. Okay, so I want to give you guys a quick rundown of what's to come in the next 15 days for the US as a whole. I know that there's a lot of folks that just want to get an overall view. I will go a bit more detailed into the separate storms in just a minute. First of all, there is obviously a threat for some light snow across the Midwest, but here is where things get interesting. A mix of snow and rain as it sags into Wednesday, so tomorrow, or as it sags into the south, and the threat continues into Wednesday and into Thursday. Potentially quite a bit of snow by the time Saturday comes across the Mid-Atlantic. Some snow across the Northeast is likely as well. We will have a large system moving in onto the Northwest within the next few days, and obviously that drops a lot of snow across the Northwest and into portions of Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington. And while this moves down, and now it will kind of spit out little waves of snow, which then we start getting a lot of disagreement. Some models take the energy and develop it into a pretty large system, and then some models just disrupt that system and just keep sending little shocks, little waves of snow across the Midwest. So that's it. If you guys live across the south, there is a potential for some ice, especially towards this area, even aside from this storm in a longer range. And definitely a lot of activity. Anywhere elsewhere in the US, probably below average, and probably good chance for snow. Notice you do have wind chill advisories, wind chill warnings indicating very cold area. If we were to take a look at the radar, right now we do not have anything going on really that's too significant. We do have our system pulling away from Boston, the Northeast. Did drop quite a bit of snow, though, and it wasn't the biggest system obviously of the year. Didn't even come close. Look at all these watches and warnings. That's obviously an indicator of what's to come. It's supposed to start very shortly, weather-wise, so that means probably the next 24 hours. Notice, though, not much, right? Today here across the Midwest, here in Chicago, was a beautiful day. It was cold, but it was sunny. And across the West, we do have a bit of activity, some showers, some snow across the mountains, and pushing into San Francisco and into Northern California and portions of southwestern Utah and northern Arizona. Okay, this map's going to change pretty quickly. Let's take a look at the GFS, and let's see what it has to say. Let's take it back to hour 6. Notice we have that system pulling away. Everything else seems quiet. Look at this. We start seeing an area of snow develop across Missouri, Iowa, into Tennessee, Kentucky. Again, here it will start mixing it with that ice. And this will be snow all to the north. So tomorrow across Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Ohio, Missouri, and into Kansas. Light snow, nothing too significant. We do start seeing this intensify and sag to the south. So notice northern Illinois may pick up a bit of snow, southern Michigan. Again, nothing blockbuster, and really the overperforming with this system isn't going to be significant, even if it does. The forecast is say 1 to 3 for these areas, maybe 1 to 4. Maybe a few inches, a few places reaching 5 inches, but notice, right, this moves down, and you may be wondering, okay, where's this giant ice storm? Here's where things get interesting. Notice that this wave, this band of snow, this is 6 p.m. tomorrow Central Standard Time, so 7 o'clock in the eastern United States. We have snow spilling into Ohio, Indiana, and look at that, the Mid-Atlantic starting to pick some up, and look how long some of that snow could stay around there for. It's not necessarily going to be the heaviest in the world, but it could stay around there for a while. Notice this sags further to the south, and the ice continues. This is freezing rain. Minimal amounts of sleet. There may be some sleet, but it's the freezing rain. For those folks that don't know what that is or need a reminder, that is rain that looks like if it's just falling rain, and it is. It's just the surfaces are very cold, below 32 degrees, and the rain freezes. It's almost like if it freezes instantly on contact. That is the worst kind of winter precip, because even a tiny amount will cause travel hazards. Traffic obviously will be one of those things. And if you get even a quarter inch to half an inch, you will start seeing damage, destructive damage, if it gets towards 1 inch. Now, this doesn't look to be a ridiculously destructive ice storm, but they do have ice storm warnings, which I will go over in just a minute. Notice that some of these rainfall rates could be pretty heavy, and if this sags, across one location for a long enough time, there could be some rather significant ice. And I never want to underplay an ice storm because it's not like a snowstorm where an inch is really just a nuisance. Obviously, an inch of ice would be catastrophic, but more comparatively to an inch of snow, probably like a tenth of an inch of ice. That's still significant. That probably won't cause widespread power outages, but it will coat, streets, sidewalks. So while you're walking, driving, it'll be dangerous. And if there are strong enough winds, that could obviously still bring down power lines. Now, again, you can see this thing produces ice for a good period of time. Thankfully, it moves out after a while and transitions over to rain, so anything that does fall most likely will start melting at least to a certain point before the cold air rushes in. Notice though, the mid-Atlantic is all snow, maybe a bit of ice mixing into West Virginia and Virginia. It should not be a catastrophic event or destructive. Not that these locations will see a massive ice storm. It's just that these won't either. And notice that the snow spills in, right? This is already 12 a.m. tomorrow or Thursday morning and into Friday. Thursday mid-morning, and you can see that continues, and it's still snowing potentially into 6 a.m. Friday morning. Then that finally starts to abate, but look what we have. Flipping attention from our snowstorm and ice storm here, we look at what's going on here. So notice, right now, west is quiet. We do see little bands of showers and snow occurring across South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana. Then we start seeing a large system moving on to the coast. Lots of cold air with this one. Unlike the other ones, this could produce quite a bit of snow for maybe even Seattle, Portland, the larger areas. And I'll show you those amounts in just a bit. Notice, this thing moves in. Look, Friday, right? This is Friday. Late Thursday into Friday. We start seeing snow across Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Obviously into Washington, Seattle, yes. Portland, Oregon. There probably will be a bit of mixing, but it should be fairly limited. So one of the biggest snowstorms of the past few years, potentially, for Washington, Seattle and Portland. Maybe not for the upper elevated areas, but in terms of the larger cities, yes, it might be pretty significant. Notice that what the GFS does, which is what not all models do, all models show these little kind of disturbances from these waves coming into the Midwest and a bit of lake effect blowing onto Chicago and southeastern Wisconsin. Still have that system. This is at around 6 a.m. Friday morning. Notice these systems will be occurring pretty much at the same time. Widespread snow or rain, depending on the elevation and the exact thermodynamics. For details and locations that are hard to predict, go to the National Weather Service. They have the best handle on that. Notice that obviously Yellowstone, Grand Tetons, and into portions of southern Wyoming, quite a bit of snow occurring, and this starts spreading into the plains. Notice we have a huge polar vortex, polar high right here. This thing is spinning clockwise like all high pressures do in the northern hemisphere. Sorry, I forgot how a for a second I forgot how a clock spin there. Clockwise, so it's sending winds in this direction. And what we see is this band of snow starting to develop. It's suppressed to the south because of these strong winds from the north because of this high pressure. And look what we start seeing. The remaining moisture from this first system starts combining with this. It's not a massive system. Even if it will occur, it probably will be at most something like this. Still though, very cold air, snowfall ratio is high, and the snow duration will be pretty long. You could see snow could start in Chicago and southern Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, probably around Saturday morning and end Sunday morning, so around 24 hours potentially. Notice as it moves into the northeast, also a bit of snow and ice. Again, not all models show this. At this point, we have a massive polar vortex right here. This thing's bringing very, very cold air. Lake effect snow is coming off the walls. And look at that, we have another system moving on to Saturday and Sunday into the west. Most likely, again, a snow producer for Seattle, Portland, the lower elevated areas, and obviously the higher ones as well. Just this time around, it's for the lower ones additionally. Notice this one goes further to the south. What does that mean? It has more available moisture. And this is what more models agree on, which is ironic, or it's funny because, less models agree on the system that's less further out. But the European and the GFS ensembles agree that this system will be a rather significant one. You can see that the GFS obviously brings snow into Texas, potentially Dallas, maybe San Antonio, Austin, right? Not out of the question. As we get further towards, say, Mississippi, Alabama, that snow threat decreases, right? But still, ice for the northwestern portions of Mississippi and potentially Alabama is there. Notice Arkansas, Louisiana, and this system slides right into the northeast. This is just one model simulation. This rain snow line may be much further to the north, or there might not even be a strong system. This is definitely something to watch for, as this is 138 hours out. That is not La La Land. That is not super long range. That is medium range at best, getting into the short range. Notice this moves into the northeast. Obviously, potential for snow in the Midwest as well. If this were to take a more, say, northern track, more north and west, this could dump very heavy snow into Missouri, Illinois versus the south. That's all possible. After that, we don't get a break. We see another system. You can see pretty significant, a bit more warmer air with it, a bit more precipitation, potentially similar areas, affecting the lower elevated areas potentially as well. Maybe not as much as these first two. And then we start seeing this is our third storm. I'm getting lost with all these systems. And then more activity, which the models are slowly starting to trend towards maybe some sort of a warming pattern, but not significant. I mean, right now we are just in a absolutely stunning cold outbreak. It is quite truly. I mean, the anomalies that we are experiencing right now across some locations are just quite literally off the charts. So this will bring things more back to normal across late February. Some models, like the European, indicate a large warm up in a very, very long range, not in the next 240, but beyond a 15-day outlook. But again, 15 days ago, few models showed such cold. So that's just kind of a little speculation. But notice that the pattern remains active, and you can see this model does bring in some warm air, which is possible, of course. Okay, in terms of total snowfall, I know you guys want to look at the total snowfall. Let's take a look quickly at the total snow from the system tomorrow, right? So what the National Weather Service thinks will happen across the Mid-Atlantic. This is snow, not ice. Notice, light snow across many locations, really nothing too significant, but widespread. And then we do start seeing some pretty decent snow add up across the Mid-Atlantic. The National Weather Service, this isn't a model. This is their averaged outlook, shows widespread. Washington, D.C. is at 6 inches, right? Potentially southern New Jersey, Dover, 3 inches. Atlantic City, 3 inches. And then notice West Virginia portions could see up to 10 inches. Philadelphia, they're not showing much. Again, that could extend a bit further to the north. And this is still, this is around the time where we start seeing that Washington system occur. I guess I'll just call it that, the Northwest system. So this is the snowfall for the next 72 hours. I would say this is pretty good. These amounts still may grow, so don't get caught off guard. I will be giving you guys more updates as we go into the future. Okay, I showed you the GFS, but I do want to show you more models. GFS parallel. For the past few days, it has been non-existent. It had a data issue, but now it is up and running, and it is working. Notice latest model run. Let's see what it shows. Tomorrow's system, again, light snow. Don't be caught off guard. This could be very fluffy, very airy, if you will. So that could pile up at 2 to 3 inches of that floof. I like to call it the floof. Across Illinois, Indiana, south of, I would say, I-80 favored in terms of the snowfall across really Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, Indiana. And notice that obviously as the sags to the south brings up a bit more precipitation, and we start seeing ice develop across the Tennessee, Arkansas area into the southern Ozarks, southern Missouri picking up a bit of ice. There will be some snow pockets, but at this point they're a bit hard to predict. Again, most favored for snow is the Mid-Atlantic into portions of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, into northern Virginia, West Virginia. And notice that that's what happens. The south, right? Thunderstorms. Lots of rain. Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama. With this system, lots of rain. Again, you could be seeing some snow potentially, but that's further down the line, not with this system. Okay, so let's start tracking this forward. Notice what we start seeing is, again, this system still going on early Friday morning across the Mid-Atlantic. Mainly the ice threat is gone, but the snow threat is still there across the Mid-Atlantic area. Notice we do start seeing that very, very cold polar vortex shift to the south. We see little spots of energy. Notice right there into Thursday and Friday across the Midwest. So don't get caught off guard by that. These things can be very hard to predict and kind of come out of nowhere. Shouldn't dump massive amounts of snow, but 1 to 2 inches would cause the roads to be slick, which could obviously end up being a pretty tricky scenario. Okay, notice GFS parallel introduces that system across the west. It does not really bring much snow for, say, Seattle, more for, or even Washington as a whole, more into Oregon, into Portland, right? A bit of that snow. Notice a lot of precipitation across the west in the form of snow. Definitely good for the drought areas, but it would be preferred if it was even further to the south, as that's where they have the extreme drought areas. Notice the polar vortex continues shifting to the south, very, very colder for those folks to the north. And notice that this model, GFS Parallel, is one of the models that advertises a pretty strong system with the remaining elements from this first storm and that northwestern system. And notice, right, light snow, nothing too extraordinary, but this will be at very high ratios as we have negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit just sitting up here, or close to that, especially during the night. Now notice this rides up the northeast coast, bringing rain, sleet, potentially for the coastal areas, more of a snowy scenario inland. Michigan gets some snow, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, even Missouri, right? So definitely something to watch for and look at that. Vermont, New Hampshire could even pick up some heavy snow. Now, this is that system that the European that the GFS showed, and the European does as well. And you can see it brings more snow to Seattle. But look at this, slides to the south, so definitely good precip amounts for the southwestern United States. That's good. They're dry. They need that. Notice what we start seeing: a upward shift in this system. Right, it bottoms out. We have the trough right here. Here we start seeing that maxing of the jet stream. We have a very big dip. This is where winds up aloft are very strong, and obviously they pick up a lot of moisture. They spring this forward, and look at that. This system just intensifies. Look at that, snow into Dallas, potentially again San Antonio, Austin, those large cities. Not Houston, I would say snow, maybe a bit of ice if a extreme southern scenario like this would play out. Notice that as we push into Missouri and into Illinois, we start seeing this system really intensify, and very heavy snow potentially for Arkansas, Tennessee. So the GFS ensembles are pretty excited about the system. Notice low pressure, very strong, heavy snow right there, and moves off into the northeast, being a pretty strong system. It's not over. We see our next system moving in, a bit weaker as it's across the west. Still lots of precip for the southwest. Good news. And then notice it starts developing snow. Oklahoma, Texas, Panhandle, Kansas, Missouri. And you can see it starts sliding to the north. Essentially snow and ice pretty far to the south again. So this system slides out to the east off the coast, and we start seeing a bit of that warming trend, which the GFS also advertises, and the parallel supports that. Notice that we do still see quite a bit of an active pattern, just, maybe further to the north and more limited. We'll have to see, but, this is definitely a potential, and it wouldn't be uncalled for. Okay, so let's take a look at, sorry about that, that was my phone. Let's take a look at the European high res. So this is a model that kind of differentiates quite a bit of the system activity from the other GFS families, which are consistent relatively. So notice European right still shows pretty good coordination with the other models on this system. Snow mid-Atlantic, ice down to the Ohio Valley, into the Ozarks and Arkansas. Notice some rates could get pretty heavy with the ice. Snow continues all the way into Friday morning. And this system does not ride up the East Coast, but it drops quite a bit across the mid-Atlantic. Notice you do have little spurts of snow occurring, right? We do have that system moving on to the west. The European brings this system further to the north for Seattle versus the GFS parallel, which I just showed you, did not bring very heavy amounts of snow for your location. They're in Seattle, more into Portland. The European does show snow into Portland, just maybe a bit more of a rain mix right there for those locations. Still, though, you do have a winter storm watch for that placement. Notice the mountains pick up quite a bit of precipitation, and I just want to say, whatever happens, these systems are very hard to predict. So we'll just have to wait and see what occurs. But they're definitely tricky, probably trickier than most systems. And then notice that this is the model that shows this energy from the system move out into the plains, but it does not develop a system. If you recall, the GFS parallel develop a large swath of light snow across these locations. This model does develop very light snow, but it does not connect these systems up until it's way across the northeast, and even then it struggles. What it does show is that second system, which comes in as a beast across the northwest, through the southwest into New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, centered more into New Mexico than Arizona. And then notice, we see very heavy snow very far to the south, the European supporting this. This isn't a crazy model. This is the Euro, a very consistent, reliable model, right? So pretty concerning to see this, or exciting if you want the snow. And notice that into Louisiana, Arkansas, right? Snow, potentially some good amounts into Mississippi of ice, snow, sleet, and mixture at this point. Very early and hard to tell. Look at that system, kind of like a bomb just into portions of the Ohio Valley and potentially just west of the Mid Atlantic and out into the Northeast. And you can see the pattern does remain active on the Euro. I do want to say that a lot of the ensembles for the European, I was looking at 51 members, they show this system. Some show it way further to the north, some way further to the south, but a lot of them show it equally or stronger than what this European is showing. Okay, this is I think the most reasonable model to show you in terms of total snowfall. I did show you the total snowfall from the National Weather Service. Look at that. Look what it shows there across the west. Seattle, it shows that potentially over 6 inches. Portland, similar, though it does decrease the amounts a bit with that first system. Or sorry, yeah, with that first system. Notice decent amounts across the Mid-Atlantic, 10-to-1 ratio. You can see almost up to a foot across Virginia into, say, DC. It does center the European, a bit further to the south. Look at that, into potentially Illinois, Wisconsin, some decent amounts of snow into Iowa, right? Dry to the north, as that's where the polar vortex will be spinning. Notice we continue to add on snow across the south, precip, very snow pretty very far to the south, and as we push this into the forward time frame, you can see that's definitely evident. In terms of total accumulated water, just including snowfall but also including rain and sleet, you can see that obviously favored the south and the east, but definitely getting in some rain right there, so that's definitely good news. Let's move this forward and start talking about some of these snowfall amounts. I do want to wrap this video up relatively quickly here. Notice that we obviously have these ice storm warnings. Let's take a look at Paducah, Kentucky. In terms of freezing rain amounts, you can see that they get pretty heavy right here across Kentucky into Tennessee, up to 3/10, 4/10. That could be a potentially crippling ice storm, okay? And I don't want to make any assumptions here, but there could be some power outages if this goes as predicted. Even a tenth of an inch way up here, this kind of overshadows these amounts. This will not really be destructive, but more of a nuisance, if not, I shouldn't say nuisance. It definitely will be a disturbance to your daily life. Maybe not, crippling, as some locations may end up there. Notice that for some locations, I mean, it's just on throughout most of the next 24 to 48 hours. And again, check with your local National Weather Service. They have the best information. I'm just telling you, this ice storm's here into much of Kentucky. Let's take a look at the amounts. Very similar. Even some locations maxing out over half an inch, which is, that's a high amount. It's not very high, but wow, that's you don't want to be there. You don't even want to be in a medium, to be honest. So yeah, definitely a concern. It definitely has intensified the amounts over the last few days. Even into portions of Arkansas, they do have ice storm warnings and a bit of winter storm watches. Again, all for mainly ice. Let's just take a look at Jonesboro. And you can see freezing rain, maybe a bit of wintry mix, some snow at the end, but it's going to be more of an ice storm. And into the Mid-Atlantic here, they're going to probably issue winter storm watches and warnings, but for snowfall. And if you were to take a look at the impacts, they're pretty high right there. And if you were to take a look at Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, let's take a glance at this. Total snowfall. Notice you do have a longevity system, a long-term system. You can see snow, 1 to 2, 1 to 2, 1 to 2, almost every 12-hour period. So potentially up to 6 to 8, as you saw by some of the forecasts there. The Northwest, quickly, let's take a look at Oregon. Portland, let's find Portland. Let's click right there. Right now, pretty warm, clear skies, but look, it gets pretty serious. Snow, blustery, right? 2 to 4 inches, 2 to 4. I mean, you could easily end up with over 8 inches here by the end, this is what I mean. A potentially historic system for the West right here. I don't recall many of these locations getting this much snow. I may be wrong. I don't live there, but such a big event would be rather big. Let's take a look at Seattle. You're not under watches right now with that first system, as it probably will be less significant. There's snow likely, and especially from that second system, you could still see, though, the chances are there. So stay tuned to your local National Weather Service. I will be talking a bit about it on here as well. And overall, for the folks living anywhere else, the pattern's active. It remains interesting. And, snow could extend from anywhere across the Northeast here all the way into the South. Maybe not the coastal areas, but way over here, and obviously the elevated areas and the coast, which will be the coast. The big cities, which usually don't, will be the big story here. Up here, not that much. Very cold. That will kind of keep it further to the south. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. Consider liking the video. Consider subscribing. I'll catch you all guys in the next episode. By the way, that line wasn't really that accurate over here, but see ya. Bye.